And can you see that? All right.
Hi, my name is Shanta Dominguez, and I'm welcoming everyone to this class. This presentation on team vaping will provide info on how to prevent, detect, and counsel your youth on substance use. We'll learn what is vaping, what are the risks of vaping, how can parents help their teens, COVID-19 and related stressors for teens, what are healthy teen coping strategies, and cessation resources. Today's speaker is Jorge Casillas. He's worked with youth in the drug prevention field for the last 8 years. Mr. Casillas was a rehabilitation counselor working with teens ages 12 through 18 for 4 years. And over the last 4 years, Mr. Casillas has worked with youth of all ages and parents in Santa Clara County to prevent drug use at schools and in the community. So I will turn it over to Jorge Casillas.
All righty. Welcome, everyone. I know normally we have a bigger group where we kind of do this in person. We have a good time, we make some jokes, and we try to share so we can best communicate and share some information with each other. I don't know if more people are going to show up to the presentation or if it's just the two individuals that we have in the meeting or breakout session right now. I don't know if you all would want to wait a little bit or if we should just kind of get started. What do you all think?
Hi, Jorge, it's Stephanie, one of your co-hosts. I did see that some other people were trying to get into this workshop, but I think it's great. You have 3 parents in here, 4 now, so maybe just get started.
Okay, thank you. Sounds good. Okay, so today what we're gonna do is we're gonna give some information on vaping and also some of the marijuana component that gets involved with vaping. We're seeing a lot of interesting things at the schools, as we all know. Marijuana just became legal in the state of California in 2016. So there's some changing of what's going on. There's some different issues with what's happening. So let's get started because this all kind of started a while ago. So I think you've all had some of this stuff where you do the housekeeping part, right? So if you could please keep yourself on mute. You've already renamed yourself. Thank you for that. This presentation will be recorded as was mentioned earlier. There's a chat box because we are going to ask some questions. So if you have the opportunity or if you know how to use the chat box, if you could place the answers to the questions in the chat box. And slides and information will be shared afterwards. So you can take a picture of the slide if you'd like, but we're also going to share these. So go ahead and take pictures. There's nothing wrong with that. So let's kind of get started with what are we going to talk about here today, or what's the whole point of doing this presentation, right? Because we're hearing a lot of different things. So first things first, vaping products. What are they? What aren't they? Let's get started with the baseline. So you've probably seen some of these devices, or you've probably heard of them. You probably heard of the Juul. You probably heard of these vape pens. You probably heard, or you've probably seen individuals with these tanks or mod-based systems. But let's get started with a little bit of a historical background of where these devices came from and why is it that now in 2020 they've kind of become a big thing. So originally, back in the mid 2000s, so about 2007, 2008, the original vape pens came out. And if you all remember, I don't know how old you are, but if you remember, these vape pens, they all look like cigarettes. Most of them were disposable or rechargeable, right? But these products, they actually had a tip. And on the tip, it was an LED light that would light up when somebody would suck on the actual product. These products continued for a good while. And then what ended up happening is they weren't very popular. They weren't very popular with a lot of people. It was new technology. A lot of people were kind of wondering what's going on. What are these vape products? Are they water vapor? Are they actual nicotine? What are they? To this day, we still have questions about that a lot of people ask. Are they really nicotine-based products? Are they water vapor? What are these products? So around 2014, 15, we saw a changing of the products. What we started to see was these products now switching from a actual cigarette looking device to these USB looking products. As you can tell, the companies underneath them didn't change. It's the same big corporations that are making these products. It's just the name of the product and the actual packaging of the product changed. So they moved over to these cartridge-based systems. These became really popular. One, because you can just charge the battery component, which is the bottom part. Two, they're a cartridge-based system. So someone can have a cartridge and someone can refill the cartridge and they can go back and forth about that. The other thing that makes it also very appealing is these no longer look like a cigarette or have a light up tip at the end of the cigarette. So if you can imagine, a lot of parents, when they see these for the first time, they think it's a USB stick. A lot of the educators, the teachers, a lot of people, when they first saw these products a few years ago, nobody knew that these were vape products. I know when I was working at the residential rehab, we had individuals who were using some of these products, and if you didn't ask them, you could pass this off as a USB stick or some type of computer component. So the question is, how do these products work? There's a lot of questions about how these products work, a lot of misinformation about how they work. So today we're going to give you the facts on how these products work. So these cartridge-based systems, what we're seeing, they're pretty popular up until about a couple months ago, before COVID, were these cartridge-based systems that have a rechargeable battery. So that's this first component here. You have a cartridge. These cartridge then have electrical connectors that connect to the battery. This is a metal rod that you're going to see inside of all the cartridges. And then around it is an actual oil-based product. So whenever you hear young people use the word e-juice, vape oils, that's what they're referring to. These are not water-based products. None of them are. Rarely is there any that are water-based. These all aren't vapors. These are aerosolized products. So that's one of the big things that we're trying to educate young people on, is that this is an oil-based system. When this gets burned and it enters your mouth, that residue is actually left on your mouth and then down your throat. And we're also seeing, if right before COVID, we saw this thing called EVALI, where the actual inside of the lungs are being coated with this oil. And you probably heard of that on the news, of people actually dying from smoking these vape products. And that was because their lungs were being coated with the oil. So that sounds all fine and dandy, but what does this really mean? So like I said, hopefully you're all old enough to remember this, but do you all remember the cigarette lighters inside of vehicles? Do you remember those, the push button, when you would push the button inside of the cigarette inside, and then it would have that really kind of wound up metal component inside of it. And then when you would press it, it would get super hot and orange. It's basically the same thing. So you have your car battery. Your car battery then warms up your really hot metal component, and then that burns your cigarette. Instead of a cigarette, now it's the oils. So one of the big things I hear from young people is they like to think they created everything, but they didn't. They just miniaturized the car. So now they have a car inside of their hand. So why is it that these became really popular? Another thing that made these really popular is that one person can have the battery, the other person can have the cartridge, and another person can have the oil, or the juice, as they call it. What ends up happening is they all meet together in the bathroom, or they meet together somewhere where adults aren't watching them. They all put the pieces of the puzzle together, and then they share it. They go back and forth sharing these products. And that's another reason too why we're kind of concerned about young people sharing these products during this COVID era, because we know that, spit and actually breathing other people's air, if they have it, can make you sick. So that's just something to be mindful about when we talk to young people about sharing products, right? We always talk to them about, hey, don't share drinks with people, don't share food with people, because you don't know what they might have or what they don't have. And really important for everyone to remember, all of these oil-based products, they all have nicotine. If they tell you it doesn't have nicotine, that's not true. It is true that some have more nicotine than others. That is true. The reason why Juul became very popular is because the nicotine that was in Juul was actually a salt-based nicotine. So there was salt in the nicotine formula, And that's what made it more addicting to young people than just a regular old nicotine. Now, what do we know about young people is young people are really savvy. They move on really quick from one product to another. There was a lot of new regulations that came about. I think it was in 2018, 19, that actually made cartridge-based vapes illegal to sell if they came in flavors. The catch to that was that if the vape doesn't have a cartridge, but it's now a disposable, you can still sell it with flavoring. I'll say that again. If you can sell your vape and it doesn't have a cartridge or a removable component to it, you can still sell it with flavoring. Hence why these have become very popular with young people. These went back to the old technology of it's a disposable, kind of like the old light up cigarettes where you smoke them, and then when you're done, you throw them away. That's what these are here. So these are the new thing that we're seeing all the young people use that are using these products. They're called the Puff Bar. As you can see here, the Puff Bar comes in a whole bunch of different flavors. I think there's about 23 different flavors. And these products work almost identical to the Juul. So they have a battery that's in this smaller region here. And this is all just one piece. So this doesn't break apart. So they have a battery. The battery is non-rechargeable because it's a disposable, so they have to throw it away. They have about 250 puffs inside of one of these products. Then you have the battery connectors that are on the inside, and there's a long metal rod. If you ever go on YouTube and you look up a Puff Bar teardown, you'll see there's a long metal rod. And on that rod, instead of having an oil like these guys here, what they actually have is a wound cloth. So the cloth is wrapped around that metal rod, and that cloth is soaked in the oil. And then this triangle goes to their mouth. So when they suck on it, it activates all the different components and technology that are in there to burn that little piece of cloth. These are very popular as well because they only cost from $8 to $10 per bar. They last about 250 puffs. If you could think about that, if you give your child $20 a week to go buy some lunch so they can have something to eat during the week, $10 will go to a Puff Bar, and then the other 10 goes to food. So, you know, they're very accessible to young people. So why are these products also very addicting, or why is it that these products became very popular? If you remember the old term, it was called the chain smoker. So you probably remember that term where people would smoke. They maybe when they're adults, right? They take a break, they smoke. They go to lunch, they smoke. They get out of work, they smoke. They eat right before dinner, they smoke. After dinner, they smoke. Maybe they're watching TV and they smoke. So you kind of remember that term if you've heard it before. What ended up happening was someone who's a chain smoker usually smokes about 1 to 2 packs a day. Because if you can imagine, right, it's not socially acceptable anymore to smoke inside of restaurants or smoke inside of an airplane or even inside of a bar. People don't smoke inside of a bar. So the likelihood that people are smoking these products very easily is pretty slim. So they have to go out of their way to find a separate place, to find an isolated location to smoke these products. They also have to then get a lighter. They have to get the cigarette out. There's a whole bunch of different things that go along with it. So they smoke maybe 1 to 2 packs a day. What we know is that each cigarette has about 1 milligram of nicotine. So they smoke anywhere between 20 to 40 milligrams of nicotine a day. That's about a chain smoker. What young people were reporting to us, now this was pre-COVID, so right with COVID now, they're all at home. It's kind of hard to see or get some feedback about what they're doing, what they're not doing at home. But they were telling us as adults, they were telling us that they were smoking anywhere between 1 to 2 of these Juul pods a day. They were smoking 1 to 2 of these a day. And that's what they told us, right? So it could be more, it could be less, we don't know. But most of them were saying that if they do smoke these products, they were smoking between 1 to 2 of these a day. Now, if you think about that, how much nicotine that is, each pod is about 40 cigarettes. So if they're smoking 1 to 2, they're smoking the equivalent of 40 to 60 or 80 cigarettes a day worth of nicotine. That's a lot of nicotine, especially because what we know is that a young person's mind doesn't develop until they're 25. There's this thing called the prefrontal cortex, which is the front part of the brain, and that doesn't develop until someone turns 25. What we know is that the younger that someone starts using a substance, so nicotine, alcohol, marijuana, the younger they are, the more likely they are to develop an addiction issue. We've had reports of people in middle school smoking these, high school, of course. And it really just goes back to just being mindful of talking to your youth about long-term addiction and what this actually means, because to them, it's just, I'm just smoking some nicotine, but their brains are already being rewired. The dopamine levels, the things that make people happy are being rewired to make it so if they don't have this in their body, it's hard for them to be happy. So it's very important that you talk to the young person about that. Another reason too why these products became very addicting is because just like with the Juul pod, these here, they don't have a limit. When you're done smoking your cigarette, you're done smoking your cigarette. With this, you can just puff, 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 puff. And then all you have to do is refill the cartridge or just recharge the battery. Now with this one, there is a little bit of a limit, right? It's 250 puffs. What young people are reporting to us is that they're going through one of these about a day or a day and a half. So every 2 days, they're going through one of these, what we're hearing. So that is a little less amount of nicotine, but it still could be, right? If they're smoking one of these a day, they could be smoking 50 cigarettes amount of nicotine a day. So, and they're really accessible. They come in different flavors, like I mentioned. So that's why they're really popular with the youth right now. So if you see something that looks like this, they usually come in colored covers. If you see these in your home, just know that these are vape products, nicotine containing products. So this is going to be the first question of the day. So why might someone start feeling intense withdrawal systems after using a puff bar for a short period of time? And you can put your answer in the chat. So either A, the nicotine in one pod is close to 2 packs of cigarettes. B, because they are craving the flavors. C, their pleasure pathway is weaker than others. Or D, the person may be just anxious in general. Or you can unmute yourself or just say it. All right, so we have A, okay. Anyone else? All right, so let's see what we got. Correct. A, winner, winner, chicken dinner. So yes, the large amount of nicotine that's entering the body at such a young age is what makes these young people feel very intense withdrawal systems when they start leaving these products. And we're going to talk about withdrawals and cravings and how to talk to your youth, the counseling component at the end of this presentation. So if you want to talk about that, we can also just jump ahead and talk about that because we do have a lot of information on that. So first things first, when we talk to young people and when we talk to most people, they usually say, oh, well, I mean, yeah, okay, they're in oil, but how bad can they really be? I mean, I've heard of essential oils. Isn't that a thing that smells good? And if you rub essential oils on you, doesn't it take some of the pain away? These are not the same type of oils. If you look at their packaging, they're always going to tell you that they only have a few flavors, and they're always going to say natural flavors or natural oils or natural extracts. They're always going to try to make it seem like it's something that isn't as bad as it might be. One time I saw packaging for a THC vape, and it said vegan, GMO, not tested on animals, all these things, right? That somebody would say, oh, well, this seems like it's a reasonable conscious product. But of course, right, it's a THC vape that's all marijuana concentrate. So just be very mindful that these are all the other products that are in these cartridges or in these vapes that most companies aren't going to tell young people about, and they're not going to tell us as adults about. I always like to joke with the young people when we do this presentation to them is that half of these products, I probably can't even pronounce the name to them. And I'm supposed to be the adult, right? So I'm supposed to be the one that's supposed to know what these things are. And I work in the prevention field, and I've seen a whole bunch of different types of drugs and things like that. And I still would have a hard time pronouncing some of these names. So just be very mindful of what you're putting into your body and what these products might be, because at first they might seem like it's no big deal, but you really actually don't know. And here's another thing that we use to talk to young people about, because a lot of the times with young people, they're very visual. So they like to see kind of like, well, what do you mean by that? Well, why are these products bad for you? Because just like we used to talk about cigarettes and all the different chemicals that were in cigarettes, I remember being a kid and they would come and show us the images of how some of these products were in pesticides, right? So just like that, even though it's not a cigarette, it's still in there. Uh, you have some of the other things like the rubidium that's in the fireworks, the formaldehyde that's used for embalming corpses and things of that kind. So all of these products and all these things that um, you would think would have gone away just because it's an oil-based system, it's actually almost the same thing. So um, it's really highlighting to young people that yes, these products are bad for you, and don't just think that because now you're not burning something, it's not bad for you. So what we know about the brain and what we know about young people is that the younger they use, like I mentioned earlier, it rewires their brains. So it makes them more dependent on these products because it makes them feel happy. One of the big things that we know about humans is we like to be happy. We like to feel pleasure. That's why people eat sugar. That's why people drink coffee in the morning. That's why some people exercise because it makes them feel good. And we as humans, we like to feel good. That's part of our makeup of what we like to do. So just remind that to young people when you're talking to them, because one of the big things that we hear from parents is a lot of confrontational conversations. So it's not about the confrontation; it's about rewording or rewiring the conversation, so they understand that you care for them and that you're just worried for their actual safety. One of the things I used to tell the counselors at the rehab where I work, play the chess game. Know where the game is going before you get into the conversation. It's always good to know where the conversation is going to end before you start that conversation. So other risks that are associated with these products, we talked a little bit about some of those issues, but we always know that they're irritating to the throat, they're infectious to the throat, right? So they coat the throat, they coat the lungs, they coat the mouth. Just like we used to hear about tobacco cancers, where people would chew tobacco and then they would have to get their tongues or their jaws surgically altered. That's something that we don't know if that's going to happen, right? We don't know if these products are going to cause cancer. What we do know is that all the young people that are using these products, they're the guinea pigs. That's what I always like to tell young people. You are the guinea pig for these products. We just found out that yes, these products can kill you. Like I said, it's called Ivali. Uh, I think we had about 68 to 70 deaths, and this was right before COVID, right? So COVID came along in March. These young people were dying. I think it was around September, October, kind of like June to October. So the emphasis on Ivali kind of went away because then another lung issue that is, I guess you could say, more widespread or more dangerous came along, and then started taking up all the limelight or all the information on it. So we don't know if these numbers have gone up. We don't know if those numbers are accurate before Ivali. So because we didn't know that this was an actual thing that was being occurred by the vapes, there wasn't data that was being collected to say, hey, so 2 years ago when that person came in for that lung issue, it was because of the vapes. That information wasn't being collected. So the number could be a lot higher than what we have as an official tally. So just be very mindful of that. Be very mindful when we also talked about youth is that it actually does affect some issues with the heart. A lot of young people, they don't believe that just because some of the things they've heard on the internet and some of the things they've heard on social media. So what are other reasons why young people are attracted to these? We talked about it, right? The flavors. I, as an adult, if you were to tell me that something's going to taste like Twinkie, I'd be like, okay, well, let's give it a try. I'm not going to die from it, right? No. Okay, well, I'll give it a try. I mean, yeah, I like Twinkies, right? I'm sure some of you like some of these things, right? Like strawberry shortcake. You might like bananas. Some people like mango. So all these things, right? It's very attracting to a young person. It's very attracting to somebody who might be willing to try something if they don't know that it's actually that bad for them. So the next question that we're going to ask is, which of these increase the addictiveness of a cigarette and e-cigarette and vapes? Is it A, sugar, B, increased nicotine, C, flavors, or D, all of the above? Okay, say one person. So, okay, D. Oh, I got two. All right, so let's see. Correct. Yes, D. All of these different things come together to make these products more addicting to young people. So, what are other things that kind of got young people into this? So, I'll play that again because it's really fast, but it's also really important. So, I'll play that again. So, everyone ready? Now, that's an ad that was on social media for a good while before it had to come down. If you all saw that really quick, do any of these people look like me? Do they look like an older adult? No. Do any of these people look like somebody that kids might want to be or they might find their style attractive? Yes. All of these young people kind of fit the mold of what young people are wearing nowadays, right? That's kind of the style that they all have. Same thing with this one here. All of these young people that you see, they're all attractive to the youth, right? They all have styles that the young people are wearing nowadays. They all look like a young person. They don't look like they're old people. They don't look like they're adults that have all these responsibilities and all these things that they say, that isn't cool right now because they're young, right? Um, but when they see this, to them, this is like, oh, well, if they're in the ad with the product, that must mean they use it, right? Because they're in the ad. So if they're using it and they look like that, I guess it can't be that bad if I use it, right? Because if they don't look bad, I might not look bad either, right? And we see this through all the different generations with advertising. The difference is this was actually done through social media. Uh, most parents, most adults, when we ask them, so what do your kids do on social media? I don't know. I know they're on Snapchat. I heard they're on Instagram. I heard this new thing called TikTok, but I don't really know what the application is all about. But they know that the young people use it. So it's very important that you know what your young people are doing on these social media applications, know what they're looking at, know who they follow, and just understand how social media kind of works. Because social media kind of works this way, right? So they have a thing called an influencer, which would be something kind of like what you saw earlier. That influencer then posts something on the internet. Uh, it could be that that person's actually using the product. It could be that the person actually isn't using the product, but they make it seem like they are. They post things like this. This was an actual person who was a paid Jewel influencer. She mentions they like my edgy style and that I appeal to the younger market. Now, this is before Jewel got pulled off of social media for all their posts, but that's what we were seeing. This is what we're seeing now. We're all in quarantine. I think at first there was a little bit of a thing where a lot of people didn't know how long this was going to last. They were kind of going back and forth. It's going to be for we don't know. But these companies they didn't wait. They didn't take the time to say, oh, we're going to wait for this to go. It's going to go by. No, they actually started creating these advertisements. So this one here, if you can't see the screen, it says solo break. We know that the inside vibes have been ... quite a challenge. Stay sane with Puff Bar. This solo break, we know you'll love it. It's the perfect escape from the back-to-back Zoom calls, which you're on right now, parental text, because now your parents are inside your house texting you, hey, what are you doing? What do you want for dinner? Do you want to go for a walk? And WFH stress. So, and then underneath it, it says shop now. So this is some of the things that they're doing, right? They move with the times, just like back in the days, they used to have the old advertisements inside of magazines. You talk to young people, they say, I don't know what a magazine is. Never picked one up. I don't know what you're talking about. So they move with the times, and these companies are very good at what they do. And they have a lot of money and a lot of resources to pull these things off. So here's another question for everyone. Which of the following is not true of how vaping affects your body? A, flavors and other chemicals impair lung function. B, the aerosol increases your risk for developing heart or lung disease later in life. C, they are healthy for adults. Or D, nicotine tricks the brain into thinking it needs more nicotine. Which of the following is not true of how vaping affects your body? All right, we got one. So B, C. Okay, so let's see what we got. C, yes, they are not healthy for adults either. One of the things that we're trying to figure out and what we're figuring out is that yes, these actually are not healthy for adults, and they actually do cause issues for adults. And this is something that we kind of saw with the Uvali, where some of the patients that were actually getting sick were actual adults. Now, what's information that is really kind of close to your home or kind of matters to what's going on inside of our county? So these are the numbers that are broken down by grade, by gender, and by different races and identity groups. So what you can see is that people are using these products. People are using them in different ways. What we know about young people is that about 30% of them have tried it so far. So that doesn't mean that all young people have used them, but we know that about 30% of the young people in the county have actually used these products at least once. So what is other statistics or what are things that were happening? This is all pre-COVID, mind you. 54.6% of high school students report getting these products from social sources. So some of you might be wondering what that means. So it's a friend, it's a relative, it's somebody that they know. So they actually physically get this. Right now, I'm sure they're figuring out different ways of getting these products, right? Because they can't leave the house or they can't go to the store and things like that. 45.4% are actually purchasing these cigarettes either through the internet or through somebody where they do the old technique of hanging out in front of a liquor store or in front of a smoke shop or whatever it might be, asking somebody to go in there and buying the product for them, and then the person gives it to them. So those are different things that we're seeing. So when it comes to the lungs, why does this matter? What we know is that it causes inflammation. It destroys the air sacs in the lungs. So there's this thing called a popcorn lung. There's a weaker immune response to infection. So what we know from people who smoke these products is their defenses, their immune system is lower. And because their immune system is lower, they're more likely to get an infection. So if they do catch COVID or if they do come around someone who has the COVID-19 infection, they are more likely to get that infection than someone who is not smoking these vape products. I don't know if this will play, but let's see. You might be able to hear it, hopefully. Oh, you might not be able to hear that.
Jorge, if you in your sharing options, under options add optimize computer sound, we should be able to hear it.
Ah, how about now?
Perfect.
Cool. Thank you. That's just a quick video to illustrate just the kind of the conceptualized component of catching this infection and not catching this infection of COVID-19. Those phone numbers will also be at the end of the presentation. So if you didn't catch them, just know that we will have them at the end of the presentation on a slide. So you can take pictures of them or you can write them down if you'd like. So we're gonna move on to the next component of this presentation. And that's the cannabis component of this, because not every single young person who uses nicotine uses marijuana, but a lot of the young people who use cannabis started with nicotine or they smoke cannabis and nicotine products. So there's this weird kind of a confection of they're mixing, right? The cannabis with the nicotine, or they started with the nicotine, they move on to the cannabis. And that's kind of what we're seeing from what they're reporting to us and how they're kind of moving through these products. So what do these products look like? They come in a lot of different shapes, a lot of different forms. So this here is an actual brownie. They call it an edible. You probably heard that term. These come in different forms. They come in gummy bears, they come in brownies, they come in cookies, they come in a whole bunch of different things. Um, and usually people get these from a dispensary. Also, people can get them on the black market, but that's a different story for a different day. They also come in these type of things. Some of you might be wondering what this is or what this isn't. You've probably heard of the term wax or dab or hash, honey oil or hash. That's this product here. This is kind of like a gummy, goopy product. You've probably seen or probably heard of this, the traditional marijuana that most people, the green plant that most people hear about or most people have maybe seen. And this is the other one that we're seeing really popular. So these three are kind of the main new popular ones with the youth. Traditionally, this is something that was really popular, but this here, this is an oil, just like the nicotine vape, but instead of having nicotine, it has THC. And this here, which is a THC product that's depending on how they make it, it is pretty high in concentration of THC. And these are just some glass products that you might see. And these are other things, they call them tinctures. They're not very popular with the youth, more with young adults. So what do you need to know about this, or why does this matter? One, it matters because young people are probably going to ask you about this. Two, you might come across this in your home or out in the community or relative, whatever it might be. And three is so you can know what these products are. So when someone asks you about this, maybe a coworker, whatever it might be, a neighbor, you have the proper information to discuss with them. So marijuana has a lot of different chemicals inside of it. The plant has a lot of chemicals. The two main components, or the two main active components that you hear about a lot, are THC and CBD. THC is the thing that gets you high. That's why the little guy is kind of holding his head, because he's like, oh, I'm kind of out there. The other one is CBD, which you've probably heard is used for medicine. So let's break that down. So THC is the thing that gets you high. You probably remember the Cheech and Chong. You probably remember people talking about the munchies, all those type of things. That's THC. The voters in the state of California in 2016 made this legal for people 21 or older. They did not make it legal for people under 21. So if you're a high school kid or your middle school kid says, hey, well, it's legal, but not for you. It's only legal for people who are 21 or over. They then have to go to a special store. They call it a dispensary to get these products. You can't just buy these in the black market or meet someone up at a parking lot and buy it off of them. That's not how it works. They have to be sold through an actual store. These products here, THC, they're just to get high. They have, there's only a few of them that are actually FDA cleared to be medicines. Most of the products or everything that you're going to see with THC, most of that is going to be just so people can get high. That's basically what it is. That's what you're going to see inside of the waxes, inside of the dabs, inside of the brownies. You're going to see a lot of that. Now, the other thing you're going to hear about is this thing called CBD. I've gone to liquor stores, I've gone to gas stations, and I see CBD gummies, CBD oils for your joints, or CBD for this. Most of those aren't going to be real CBD medicine. Most of those are going to be a CBD that's based off of a hemp plant, which is a whole different thing for a whole different conversation, because I can go into like a 30-minute thing. But just know that those aren't real CBD. If you want real CBD, you have to go to an actual medical dispensary that then gives you this medicinal product. So if you're buying these products at your local liquor store, your gas station, I've also seen them at some of the big box stores, and they say that they cure your joint pain, or they're going to help you with it. Just know that most of that is going to be a placebo effect, because you think that this product is going to make you feel better. Most of these are not a CBD actual medicine. So just be very mindful of that when young people tell you about that. Just know that that's the truth. So yes, CBD has been used for some people for medicine, for epilepsy, seizures, things of that kind. That is true. But the products that you see at the big box stores, liquor stores, gas stations, those are not real medicine. So just be very mindful of that. Why does this also matter in the amount of THC, or why when this became legal? It matters because our brains only have so many receptors for these THC products. what we know is that young people, their brains are developing, and their brains actually react to this THC in a completely different way that some adults' brains react to these products. I don't think there's any kids here, so I'll say it. What we know from the science is that when people start using in their 20s, they're very unlikely to become addicts when they're in their 20 to 22, 23, 20. That's because the brain is pretty much developed. They haven't used any alcohol, they haven't used any marijuana, so their brains were able to naturally develop. What we know is that when young people use these products, especially at a young age, so 12, 13, 14, their likelihood of becoming addicts is very high. I think it's like a 20% higher than individuals who didn't use these products. So why does that matter? Because back in the olden days, when people said marijuana wasn't bad for you, marijuana is just this plant. We smoked it back at Woodstock or whatever it might be. That might have been true. That might have been true. The marijuana, the THC levels that were in that marijuana were pretty low. Now you can kind of start seeing this line starts exponentially growing. And if you notice, this line actually only goes up to about 2011. Since that time, marijuana has changed a lot. I like to say it's kind of like the strawberry lettuce thing, right? Where strawberries and lettuces have been engineered by farmers to taste better, to be juicier, to be riper, to be sugarier, to be better. It's the same process here. I had the chance one time of going to a dispensary in the city of San Jose, and when you go to the front, yes, all the people there were maybe young people or people that might use. When I went to the back, and I went into the laboratory section, when I went into the actual section where they were making these products, every single person in the back had a master's or a PhD degree in some type of botany and some type of chemistry and some type of chemical engineering. These were all highly educated individuals that were making these products. These were not the mom and pop guys that you hear about in the backyard that blow up a shed or whatever it might be. These were serious engineers, these were serious chemical people. These were people that knew what they were doing and what they were making. Another way to look at this is the amount of THC is different and it affects people differently because there's more of it in the product. So it's just like alcohol, right? When you drink a beer, if you smoke a joint, it might have maybe 10, 15% THC, maybe even less, just like a beer. A beer might have 3 to 8% alcohol. If you drink hard liquor, so like tequila, vodka, scotch, those things have about 60 to 70% alcohol inside of those products. So just like the THC, right? You start to see the increase in it with the wax and the oils. And then at the very end of the spectrum, you kind of have like rubbing alcohol or what they call white lightning, where it's pretty much just pure alcohol. And we've had reports of some of that THC just being pure THC, some of those oils or dabs being almost pure, so in the 90%. So if you can imagine, if you're a young person and the first time you ever drink alcohol or the first time you ever use these products, no one ever tells you how much you're supposed to use, how much you can use, how much you should use, and you go and you drink rubbing alcohol, which is kind of like the highest strength, right? You could probably imagine that you're probably going to get sick or you're going to have some adverse reactions. What we know about young people and these products is their brains are developing. So the way that they process these products is different. Some of them have anxiety issues. Some of them have had this other consequences, and that's just because of their genetics or some of the issues that they carry with them that they might not be aware of. So how do they use these products, or how do these products get ingested? So if they vape it, it takes about 5 to 10 seconds for them to start feeling the effects. It could last 30 minutes. It could last several hours. It just depends. The concentration depends on how they make it, if it's mislabeled, if it's not. And it also depends too on their fat cells. When I worked at the residential rehab, we had individuals who would smoke 2 to 3 times a day. They were doing this every day. And they were still testing positive for THC 30 days later after they had stopped using it. So for 30 days, the THC was still inside of their fat cells being burned off and being processed. So these products linger in your fat cells and they get in there and they're kind of hard to get out. Edibles take a longer time to take an effect. The effect could last anywhere from like an hour up to 2 hours. It just depends. It could take an hour. It could take 30 minutes for these products to take effect. It depends. Everyone is different because everyone processes food differently. If I eat a cheeseburger I might not process that cheeseburger as fast as you might, just because we have different body types, different metabolisms, all those type of things. And all of those take into effect on edibles. Now, somebody asked me one time, well, how are edibles made? If you've ever made a cake or if you've ever made spaghetti, you know how edibles are made. They mix all the products together, they get their THC oils, and then they put them inside of whatever they're baking or whatever they're cooking. And there you go. Now you have your edibles. And that's how these products work. So that's why they're able to make them into gummies. That's why they're able to make them into brownies, popcorns, gummies, all these things. And drinks. We've also seen drinks of these products because they just mix in the THC when they're actually making the product. Now, here's another question for everyone. Why might a young person use cannabis to avoid uncomfortable and sometimes painful parts of teen life? A, there is little adult support at home and school. B, friends around them are using cannabis too. C, still figuring out what coping skills work best. Or D, all of the above. No one? Okay, I'll just go on to the answer then. D, all of the above. That's why young people use these products. So some of the short-term effects or some of the things that you're going to be able to see that are really easy to see if your young person is using these things. The red eyes, the dry mouth, they're going to have an increased appetite, increased heart rate. They're going to have a delayed response. You're going to see some skin issues because when they smoke a glass product, right, they're holding a very hot product to their fingertips. So they're going to have burnt fingertips. If they use glass products, they're also going to put them on their mouths. So you're going to see black marks start showing up on their mouth. And that's because the glass is burning their mouth. They have to use a lighter to light the glass pipe, so that you're also going to see their thumb with their right hand or left hand or whatever it might be. You're going to see them with marks on them or actual burn marks. You're going to start seeing a lot of issues with memory. They're going to have memory issues. They're going to have a hard time remembering things. An altered perception. So what we know about people who smoke marijuana is their reflexes are really slow. So when they drive vehicles, it's almost the same thing as if they're under the influence of alcohol. It's pretty bad. And they have a very hard time judging when to stop, how fast to go, what the flow of traffic is, and things like that. So what can you do? So these are all things that we're going to share with you about what you can do and also why young people are using. So why are they using? Because a lot of people say, well, why? Why do they, if we know they're bad for them, if they know they're bad for them, why are they doing it? So a lot of them do it to fit in, to be cool. What we heard from young people is, well, I don't want to go to a party and be the only square. Well, they don't say square, right? But they say, I don't want to be the only person that goes to the party that everyone's looking at like, well, why aren't I doing anything? I don't want to drink. I don't want to do marijuana. I don't want to do pills or any kind of hard drug because I know my parents would get mad at me. So if I smoke a vape, it might not be as bad. And people will give me a break. They won't get on my back. So those are things that we've heard from young people. Some of them actually do have some issues with anxiety and depression, and they feel like they don't have the proper coping mechanisms because, right, they're younger. They haven't lived through life as much as us adults, so they haven't figured out what works best for them when it comes to coping skills. Some of them, they say, well, because I just want to have something to do. I'm bored. I don't have much going on, and I just want to do something. I'm kind of just hanging out at the house. I'm pretty bored. Other things that we also hear is that they say it's normalized. So whenever they go to a family function, whenever they go to a family party, my aunt, my uncle, they're always drunk or they're always doing drugs and they seem like happy people. I want to be happy. Well, why shouldn't I give it a try if it makes them happy? Well, why shouldn't I do it? Right? So we hear that from young people. So it's about kind of explaining to them some of the things that they're seeing and why it is that what they're seeing is something that they're seeing. Because addiction might run in the family, right? But that's a very taboo subject that a lot of people don't want to talk about. But if we don't talk about it, how are they supposed to know that that runs in their genetics or that runs in your family? So signs of vaping, so changes in clothes, so different styles. We know that some of these sweaters in the drawstrings, they actually have vapes that are built into the drawstrings in the sweaters. Some of the kids, they cut holes in the long sleeves. That's why a lot of the schools were saying no more long sleeves because the kids were putting the vape products inside of the long sleeves. You're going to see an increased thirst, so they're going to have a lot of water. You're going to see some nosebleeds, different sleep patterns because now their body has nicotine. Nicotine is not a relaxing substance. It's actually an accelerant. It's a stimulant. So when people smoke nicotine, they actually start burning more calories, so their body starts moving faster. So if they start smoking these products right before bed, they're not going to be able to go to sleep very easily. You're going to have some signs of depression, some signs of moodiness, irritability, and not just the typical I'm a teenager, so I'm moody, leave me alone. It's going to be some like serious like anger issues that you're going to see because they don't have these products or they're coming out of their body. They're going to start being more secretive. They're going to start lying to you. They're going to start kind of, you can say, pulling away from you because now they know that they're doing something they're not supposed to do. And now they have to hide it in their room. They have to hide it under the covers. They have to hide it from you whenever they go use. If they start taking a long time in the bathroom, start asking questions. Why is it that you're doing that? Because these puffs, these puff bars and some of these jewels, the plume of smoke is very small. It's not like the old school vape products that had a big plume of smoke. These plumes of smoke are actually pretty small. So they could be in their room, they could be smoking these products and you would never know because the plumes of smoke are very small. You're going to start seeing some physical changes. So because they're not sleeping, because they're probably not eating correctly, you're going to see some weight fluctuations. You're going to see some eyelids, like I mentioned earlier. You might see some burnt fingertips, some burnt marks around the lips. What are other signs that you're going to see? So this is kind of for the withdrawals. So you're going to have, there are going to be cravings for these products. You're going to feel a little depressed, a little angry, irritable, or on edge, grouchy. You're going to see them having issues with concentration. You're also going to see them also be very kind of, I guess you can call it messy or sloppy. So their bodies are going to try to coordinate themselves and kind of, because now they don't have as much nicotine in them. So you're going to start seeing all of those, the energy fluctuations, all those type of things. And also you're going to see, like I mentioned, the weight changes and the changes in appetite. So what can you as caregivers do to safeguard against this? Like you were here today, be equipped with the facts, know the information, know some of the actual things that are happening, have a conversation whenever it might be. I always like to tell everyone is have the conversation when they're not paying attention to the conversation. So if they're playing video games, catch them playing video games. If they're the type of person that they like to draw or they like to do art, go ahead and join them. If they're playing video games, doing drawing, painting, playing a musical instrument, whatever it may be, go ahead and join them and start having a conversation that way. Because if you try to set a time that I'm gonna meet you at 6 o'clock on Monday and we're gonna talk for 20 minutes and I want you to give me all the answers, that's not gonna work. They're not gonna give you information. They're not gonna give you what you want because to them, it's already a confrontation. It's already, okay, well, if they set up a time, they set up a date, or, it's kind of like, am I in trouble? What's gonna happen here? I should be on the defensive. When you catch them when they're doing something else or when they're not fully aware of what your conversation is going towards, it's a lot easier to get them to have a conversation. Try to understand why it is that they're using, convey the expectations. That's one of the big things that we like to remind adults and remind young people is that you need to know the expectations of your home and you need to know what the rules are. What we know about young people is young people are very either right or wrong. It's either black or white. They don't really kind of have that gray area that where we as adults can say, well, that kind of seems right, or sometimes that might be wrong, so I don't know, it could be either one. We have that as adults, right? Because our brains are developed, we've gone through life experiences, but young people, they don't really have that. To them, it's either right or wrong. So if you say at 10 o'clock everything has to turn off, at 10 o'clock things turn off. If you start saying, oh, well, I'll give you an extra 15 minutes, oh, I'll give you an extra hour today, to them, now they don't know where the rules are. They don't know where the boundaries are. They don't know how far they can push it, how far they can't push it, because now all the rules have changed, and to them, it's a different game. So just be very consistent with the rules, be very consistent with the expectations. Also, with being a role model, just be very consistent with that. I know that's hard for a lot of people, but if you say, don't do this, then don't do it yourself, because that makes it really hard for them, because then they have this cognitive dissonance about, well, what's right and what's wrong, because my parents do it, but they tell me not to do it. Or are my parents bad because now they're doing what they told me not to do? So then how do I treat my parents because now they're a bad person or they're the bad one? So it kind of gets very convoluted very fast. So if you say no, no for yourself as well. Oh, I got it. So just be very mindful of that. I'll close this out and, oh, it's gonna close in 50 seconds. So starting the conversation really quick, everyone, before this thing closes out on me, and then I can't tell you guys. A lot of people tell me, well, Jorge, how do I start a conversation? First things first, a lot of kids are always gonna have headphones in their ears. Have them take one out. A lot of the times they're gonna say, well, I don't wanna take it out. Well, then you have to play to them, because young people, they like to feel like they're better than us, right? Because they're the young person, they're younger. So have them take the headphone out. And the reason for that, you're gonna say, is because if an ambulance, a police officer, whatever it might be, come towards me, my old ears can't hear what's happening. So I need you to take the headphone out so I can hear you. Now you have one free ear where you can start doing the counseling conversation or the actual conversation. And before this turns off on me,